in tight on the thing. All right. Okay. Right. Good. Here's the poem of the Cid. Okay. The Bayeux Tapestry. So, give me some, are we on? Rolling? Rolling, all right. As you'll see, this thing wraps completely around a long hall, and it's a tapestry. I mean, the artistry is great. The Bayeux Tapestry was done afterwards. It's kept in France. It was done in what is now France. It was done by the Normans, and it shows their version of the events. You've seen Howard's summation of the events, but what it's really detailed and exciting. They knew what battle looked like. And this is the Battle of Hastings. You have to be in tight to see the horses tumbling. Often more horses than men were killed. The dismembered people, the guys with heads cut off. From the battle. We're trying to get a feeling for what the early Middle Ages are like. And I think that the best way to do it, first we started with the Howarth, talking about how it's very important to read that, talking about how the Normans were a more savage group, really, than the English. I think that we are accustomed to thinking of the French as more refined or sophisticated or something, right? After several hundred years of the Anglo-Saxons being reduced to poverty and to penury and peasantry, that did happen slowly. But I like the movie Beckett, where he introduces the fork. Instead of eating with your hands, he says, there's something new. A lot of the sophisticated stuff they introduced because they'd been on crusade, and the Arabs had a more sophisticated civilization. They'd borrowed a lot from the Chinese too, but they had the fork. And he says, this way, you prong the meat and put it in your mouth. And Henry says, what's the point of this? He said, well, if you just pick it up, then you have to wash your hands. He says, but then you have to wash the fork. And no, he said, my barons will stab each other with it. And during that food fight that they next have, you see the guy stab the other guy in the butt with the fork, just as he had predicted. So they were a rough crew. The movie does not overestimate that. Whether there actually was a Gwendolyn, but so many similar things happened that it was entirely believable that there would be something like that, or worse. It was a time when people took hostages. Henry's father had taken hostages from some baron or other, daughters and sons. And when this fellow revolted anyway, he had all the sons castrated, and then he had all the daughters' ears and noses cut off and returned them to the father. It was a very rough time. The Normans, a very rough group. They had their code, though, this chivalry, which eventually would develop. And one of the great things is, although it's rarely used, the Poema del mio Cid, Cid Campeador, was written about a man who was fighting exactly at the time of William the Conqueror. And the details, look at this picture. The knowledge of the anatomy of the horses and how it looks when horses stumble and go down, they know, somebody's seen this kind of thing. There's often a great specificity about medieval gore in Dante and in all of them, where you see devils cutting someone open and unwinding their bowels. And they've seen that. They've seen people tortured in the marketplace like that as punishment for different things. You couldn't walk over London Bridge without seeing, and this went on for centuries, the heads of several traitors impaled on sticks above London Bridge. You knew what that looked like. So the poem of the Cid takes place down in Castile, but the king, Alfonso, is actually almost related to William at one time. But it gives you the real flavor of what is going on. It was written, this book speculated, in the 1100s, the Cid, C-I-D, with a little thing under it, you know. It's really Said, it means my lord. He is a Spaniard, a Castilian, let's say. There's no real Spain yet. Fighting against the Moors, trying to drive them out of Spain, which they have held for centuries. And you hear terms which you interpret in ways which don't fit them. You hear about a bishop. Right next to William the Conqueror is going to be Bishop Odo fighting. Odo was his brother, and the Pope didn't make him a bishop. William just said, all right, you're now a bishop. Just the way you saw Henry II making Becket the head of the English Church, Archbishop of Canterbury. But they were rough guys, very rough guys. So this text goes back to 1307, but the Cid died in 1099, so he's a direct contemporary. These were songs that were sung in the marketplace in his honor. The Moors respected him too and called him Mio Cid, my leader. There were many Moorish kingdoms. It's a much more nuanced book than you would imagine. There are many Moorish kingdoms that the Cid goes into alliance with, fighting against other Christians. The Grand King himself, Alfonso, is obviously a complete jerk. Greed is his guiding motive. And the Cid himself, he takes money from the Jews and then, this is astonishing, pays it back. It's a very different, nuanced idea of Spain, but that's slightly off our point. What I want you to give you, though, is the feeling. Howarth pointed out that one of the reasons that they wanted to go in there and fight was booty, was loot. And that is actually, that's celebrated over and over in here in the Canción de Cid. I know some of you guys come from a vaguely Spanish background. This is Spanish on one side and English on the other, though I imagine the only Spanish that most of you know is pendejo. Well, at least we get a laugh from one person. You're not even Spanish. Come on. So, pendejo, it's very appropriate, isn't it? All right, Joe. So anyway, here's the description of the battle. These are songs that were sung, and then some great guy like Homer yoked them all together, maybe 200 years later, into this. But you'll hear a different kind of Spanish. For one thing, they don't say hablar yet. They still say the F in front of the H, fablar, fablo. If you think about it, the H is included in that F. People drop out hard sounds eventually. Okay, so as they get ready to attack, again, there's always some really technical stuff here. Embrazan los escudos, oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't have an S yet. Embrazan los escudos delante los corazones, bajan las lanzas a vueltas de los pendones, inclinaron las caras de suso de los razones, y van los ferir de fuerte corazones. It has this chanting, terrific sound to it, but this is what it means. They're getting ready to attack. They clasp their shields over their hearts. They lower the lances, swathed in their pennons. There's all sorts of pageantry involved. Everyone's very beautifully dressed, pennants hanging from the lances. They bowed their faces over their saddle trees. On the front of the saddle, there is this big protective thing that you get yourself behind. Maybe it'll stop a lance before it gets you. With strong hearts, they charged to attack them. He who in good hour was born cried with a great voice, "Attack them, knights, for the love of the Creator. I am Ruy Diaz, the Cid, the campeador of Bivar. Yo soy Roy Diaz el Cid de Bivar, campeador." So, they go in there, and he says, they destroy the enemy ranks. And again, the lovely chanting quality to it. Variedes tantas lanzas premere alcar, tanta adagara forader e pasar. You would have seen so many lances rise and go under. Is better. You would have seen so many lances rise and go under, so many bucklers pierced and split asunder, so many coats of mail broken and darkened, so many white pennants drawn out red with blood, so many good horses run without their riders. The Moors call on Muhammad, and the Christians on St. James. That is basically all that the religion is at this time. The Moors, each one of them thinks that they have sort of a tribal deity. The Moors call on Muhammad, and the Christians on St. James. There isn't anything spiritual about the religion. There's nothing like that. And the same way, one of the fiercest guys here is the bishop. Well, but it continues here when Minaya says, "The horse ran well under Minaya. He killed 34 of those Moors. His sword cut deep. His arm was crimson. The blood ran above his elbow." 510. And now, but listen to the way the triumph ends. There was great joys among those Christians. Not more than 15 of their men were missing. They took so much gold and silver, none knew where to put it down. All those Christians were made rich with the spoils that had fallen to them. It's always spoils and spoils and spoils. And the glory of El Cid is he always treats the little guys well. He keeps his 1/5 he's entitled to, but he often gives it away. And they say this over and over. Que a ben señor sirve, siempre vive, instead of vive, it's vive, en delicio, that is, my Cid Ruy Diaz has sold Alcocer. How well he rewarded each of his vassals. He has made his knights rich and his foot soldiers. In all his company, you would not find a needy man. Who serves a good lord lives always in luxury. Now remember their world. This is the only wealth really that they're going to have. They live on the edge of starvation most of the time. If you had like 5 years of drought like we have had here in San Francisco, everybody'd be dropping dead. They would be committing infanticide of the new children, and they would be walking, looking for some place where there was some grass and some food. Just like in the Bible, it hadn't changed. However, if you are these warriors, you can go and attack, and then you take the loot, the spoils. And that's actually a more distinguished life. And chivalry is the code of these horsemen. There is a code. The code is developing. But the essence of the code is giving out the correct number of spoils. It's included in the English language. The word lady was originally levedi, Levedi. Leva was loaf, a loaf of bread. In many languages, when a V comes between two vowels, it disappears. The lady was originally the loaf giver. She distributed the food. And the kings were called the ring givers. They gave gold rings. This was goodness. You shared the spoils. There is a code. I could get into El Cid because it's even better than that. But, but this is what we're working on today. Why did they invade England? Here we have, my Cid returned with all his gains. Great were the spoils of Valencia when they took that city. Those from this city, sabes, were still richer. To the least among them fell 100 marks of silver. And that's gloated over and over and over and over. El de la barba tan hermosa. And the Cid is the paragon of nobility, at least in the 1300 version. Everything he does is done for his wife and his daughters. Doña Ximene. Has anybody here ever seen the Charlton Heston version of the Cid from the early 60s? Well, that has Sophia Loren in it as Doña Ximene at the height of her beauty. And these tremendous two-fisted sword fights. It's really close to the rhythm of this. Really close to the rhythm. When he comes back, let's see, did I pull that out? I think I did. Where does this wind up? You can see the germ now of the cortesia for the ladies. He returns to, yes, I mean, here we are again. So many when the marriage takes place. My Cid gave to whomever would receive gifts, and he denied no one whatever he asks for. My Cid gave his gift 60 of his horses. So you're getting the spirit. You're getting the spirit of what the conquest was for the people that got involved in it. And when he comes back, oh, I didn't pull it out, too bad. When he comes back at one point with, as they say, the blood above his elbow, that's a standard phrase of theirs. He comes back and the wife, he says, all this I have done for you, ladies. This is how you make money here. When they say money, this is how you gain riches, and it is all for you. And the wife and the daughters greet him ceremoniously and say, we thank you, now we can make splendid marriages, and like that. There is respect for the women. It's germinating. And in the second part of El Cid, when he marries them off to some old royalty who outrage the daughters, who tear their clothes off and leave them to be devoured by wild beasts, there's revenge afterwards. It's a great poem. So you get the idea of the world that they live in. And I think that's important because after 2 centuries of basically Marxist analysis of history, it's always about, well, what about the money? What about this? Yeah, there's spoils there. But there is this concept of honor, of battle, of this early code of the horseman. And if you want to, I mean, that chanting power of he's rich, he has the money, he gives it out. Where have you heard that? Contemporary. Where can you see that today? My son last week went to a concert by Drake. If you look at any number of the rap songs, it's all about defeating enemies, screw you, I'm rich, here's where I am now. And as far as the ladies showering them with money and all this, it keeps coming back. Arnold Toynbee, the philosopher historian, pointed out that there isn't one civilization going on universally. There's several different civilizations or cultures going on at the same time, and they're in different stages. Still back to Cid Campeador there. What you know about that? I know all about that, right? Okay, so let's see. I'm dating myself with that old stuff. Now, and so that's what I want you to remember when you look at the triumphant story here in the Bayeux Tapestry. This is going to change everything. As you saw, he never wanted to do it. He never didn't want to invade. But in that world, you see that world now, where everybody's tough and everybody's a warrior and all this, he can't back down. His own men would turn on him and kill him. What we're going to do tonight is tell you the story of the conquest using the Bayeux Tapestry, and then we'll have our break. So we went to the museum. Now you're in tight. Let me see if I can get this back to the front, back to the beginning. It's so dark, damn it. There we are. Come on, back further. I think this might be it. Hold on. The Norman Conquest. Here's the tapestry. Here's the tapestry. And I wanted you in close so you could see the details. We need it tight. There we are. Okay. Now this is, of course, the Norman version. It starts, you can see Edward and Rex. Let me see if I have my pointer. You can see Edward and Rex up here. And in the Norman version, Edward sends Harold over to, you know what I'm going to ask? I'm going to ask you if you can just hit, see this button here? When you press the top of it, put where my finger is, when you press the top of it, it goes forward. Press it. Good. Thanks. In the Norman version, Edward sends Harold to Normandy to guarantee to William the Conqueror that when Edward dies, he is going to replace him. One of the reasons that Edward was sitting in Westminster was that he's the guy, now remember, preparing you to go there, that starts Westminster Abbey. So you can think of Edward the Confessor. There was this island called Thorny Island. What do you suppose it meant? No, it meant an island with thorns when you're fornicating. Get your mind out of the gutter, Jesus Christ. Fornicating. Thorny Island.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Fornicating. Just making a living here, you know, it's difficult. It's hot. All right. So, no, it was Thorny Island. And Edward decides, Edward the Confessor, he's going to make a great cathedral there in the French style eventually. I am not going to do the cathedral tonight, Westminster Abbey, because in order to see anything that Edward actually built, you'd have to go down to the foundations. It's all been redone and redone better, but they pay a lot of attention to it. They pay a lot of attention to it. Our best guess, Howarth's best guess, is that Harold went out fishing one day and was blown across the channel. Here they are, they're going out for fun. They've got the hounds and the hawks. There is a very poignant English poem. It's poignant because it is written in Middle English. And it says, "Where are they who came before us, who led the hounds and bore the hawks? Where are the ladies who wove gold in their tresses around their bright faces? It's all passed away." And I mean, they're writing this in a language which has passed away. In Middle English, it's, if I can remember, "Where beeth they beforen us waren?" Where are they that came before us? "Hondes ledden and havicus baren," hawks bore, "and hadden failed in wood, and owned the fields and the wood. The riche levadies with hair bricht boer, that weared in gold, in hair tressour, and hair bricht rood." It's all gone. So they're going, and then apparently, because everything depended, the ships were nothing, he gets blown to the wrong side of the channel. Obviously, he wasn't going to go see Harold, because he's blown. Go to the next slide, please, if you can. Oh, the thing jammed. Okay. These projectors, you know, are twice as old as you are. Let me, give me the light for a second. But I still use them because the images are better than anything that I can get out of the, I've done them, I've scanned the slides, I've, you know, everything digital. Doesn't work. It was not meant to be blown up at the front of the room. Hold on, let's see what we got here.